Okay, I think we could probably start. So I'll just do a quick introduction here. Go ahead. Kyriakos is founder and CEO of Didimi, who's going to talk about exactly, which is great. So it's something different. So this is, I'm sure some of you have heard about this already. This is a spin-off from Rice. Well, you guys calling yourselves a spin-off from Cambridge, right? You're not shying away from the.
We're not shying away.
Yeah. Okay. Good. This is a multi-modal interoperability platform, data curation, security, and trustworthiness in the construction industry. So Kyriakos actually holds a PhD from Imperial. We don't hold that against you, Kyriakos, where he was a president's fellow. What was your PhD in?
I did statistical analysis for complex engineering structures like airplanes.
So perfect for construction.
Nothing to do with construction.
I thought before Didimi, you worked at Palantir Technologies as a deployment strategist and as a consultant in the startup ecosystem, which must have been interesting in itself. So, the floor is yours.
Thank you, Brian. So, thanks for that introduction. I'll just put it out there. I have nothing to do with construction. All of my life, I did not grow up in that space. I was not trained. I'm a mechanical engineer. So I came very, very humbly to this space. I'll try to keep the talk very much to the point. The whole point of that we're going to talk about today is what is a startup? Really, not what you read in the headlines. What's the point of it? Why are we doing it? And how does that work in the context of the construction sector, which is a very peculiar one for startups. It's a huge graveyard of failed chances and a few very shining examples of success. But in my opinion, it's probably the most or one of the most exciting spaces to operate in if you know what you're doing. Hopefully I do. Not claiming I am. So first of all, Didimi. Okay, we'll use the company as an example of how we're approaching this space. So I'll do three things today. I'll give you, first of all, a very superficial look into what Didimi actually is and what we're building. And then we'll go and speak about what we're actually doing in terms of how are we building this as a company? Does it make sense? Why are we doing what we're doing? And then we'll turn back and go into Didimi into a bit more detail. At the end, that's where I'll ask you to stop recording, unfortunately. So allow me to start with that. If you, maybe a year and a half ago, we know, I was told by Yannis, we're having beer, Yannis Berlaki, the founder of DRF, that there's this cacophony of different software tools in the industry, from Revit to Rhino to MicroStation, Civil 3D, and God knows what else. And when people try to extract data from one software, ingest it into the other, there is a huge incompatibility of format, the data gets lost, it's kind of a mess, people end up recreating other people's work. So we chose to deliver a product against that demand. How the different engineers that use the standard software tools out there in construction exchange data. At some point, what happened a few years ago, let's start with Google Docs. You had synchronous editing. The quality is not that great. So you could have two people editing the same file. Let's try and do that through Civil 3D and Open Roads. Those two very used tools in construction. Here we are on Open Roads, on Civil 3D. And I make a change here in the model. It's an intentionally bad change just so that it's memorable. And what we do is that we build some plugins here. Again, sorry, the video is not in the best quality right now. I'm not sure why. And we can push that over to Civil 3D to Open Roads, from Civil 3D to Open Roads. And the idea is that normally this process takes a lot of time. We further anywhere from 2 days to multiple days. With our product, you can simply query the exact same data set from another point. Here, I'm making even bigger and even more nonsensical change. And the idea is that this is the design cycle where different people use their software tools, and I can push it directly back into Civil 3D. Now, this is a step that alleviates this pain point of exchanging data. And then what we've done is that we've played with the backend data structure, and that ability to look at the data allows us to put all of this into a graph identify all of the different changes that somebody made, attribute them to specific individuals. We can push them into GIS systems. Here, just for fun, we push that into Google so that people can know where that is. And then you can have someone that approves those changes and pushes on. That's the idea behind the product. I'll go back into the slides. So what are we trying to achieve? We're trying to have different people that can edit the same fundamental piece of data, which is queried by multiple different software tools in the industry without losing any information and doing it inversely and automatically and really be this painful. That's the surface of it. The point is, why are we doing this? And to start properly exploring this topic, we have to go back into what is demand. We've seen demand for this product, but what does it mean? Ideas, Hans, anybody? How would you define demand for a product?
Someone willing to pay for it?
Sure. That's one of the parameters. What else?
Solves a problem, I guess.
Solves a problem. That's not the full picture. A lot of people are willing to pay for a lot of things. Does not mean that there is wide demand and that there is a market for it. The main idea with demand, in my opinion, has to do with the concept of education of the market. So you have somebody that's asking for a product. In our case, we believe that someone is asking for this type of solution. So they're willing to pay for it. So of course, this is correct. The point is, when you go into a room and meet someone that supposedly is the demand source, the user, the boss of the user that's going to buy the software tool, do you have to spend a lot of time explaining what the problem is? Now, why am I saying this? Education is supremely expensive. So going into a customer and having to give them a big, all-encompassing education that relies on your fantastic communication skills and your ability to present and have the most polished product, that's a supremely expensive proposition that right now mostly large companies can do. The Autodesks of the world, the Bentleys and Trimble's, these are the types of companies that can go take out the chief technology officer of a large construction company into a state dinner and explain to them, this is what we do and this is why you should buy our all-encompassing product. That is not demand. Demand is you go into a meeting with the customer, you explain the product, they cut you off, you explain the problem, they cut you off, they explain for you what the problem is that they're actually facing, and then you come here with a solution. Think of it, we're in a room, it's on fire, and there are two people in the room, two salesmen. One person tries to educate the world about the concept of fire safety and how you should be able to properly evacuate the building. And then there's another person sitting next to the door with a sign that says go out. Everyone's going to rush that person. To me, that's how I define demand purposefully. When you find a problem in the construction sector, something that you don't really have to go in and explain a lot about, something that is not part of a whole transformational approach into the entire organization. I'm going to take all of your data and do something magical with it. That doesn't mean anything. That requires education. This is a problem that I showed you. People find it hard to exchange data, and here they know the problem, and here's a solution. Go buy it. That is the key differentiating point of demand. The customer must be asking for it, knows what it is, they're willing to pay for it, and you come in with a solution to fulfill that demand. Now, is that enough to launch a business? So have you identified the problem with one of the people that you work with? For example, one of the companies that contribute into CSIC, you go to them and you say, they tell you have this problem, and you can solve it for them. Is that enough for a business? The answer is clearly no. This demand has to be extremely scalable in order to be able to launch a business. You need then to be able to go to a lot of other customers, totally unrelated to them, but that operate in the same space, and you need to start seeing the same pattern. So how does a person with no background in construction start a startup in construction? That's exactly what I did. So we went from the hypothesis that we had that the customers face this problem, that they're actually finding it very difficult to exchange data, and went and I did about 100 customer interviews. I started from my friends that working as an architect or a civil engineer in some small consultancy, all the way to some of the CIOs and CTOs of the companies that exist within the Cambridge system, and asked them the same question. I interviewed them. What is this a problem for you? How would you buy it? How much would you pay for it? How would you want it delivered? Then this is the process of being able to validate and test the demand. And I think this is something that applies not only to commercialization, but also to research in construction. One of the examples that I've seen many, many times is we hold an industry day here in Cambridge. All of the people from all of the companies that pay for the research come here. They show up, you show them some cool, fancy product. Kudos, amazing. They don't want to be too aggressive in the would you buy this question? Is this useful to you question? The research gets finished, and then what happens after that? How often does it get adopted? Are you actually solving a problem? Obviously, this is not true in every field of research. When we're talking about quantum mechanics or some brand new discovery that's pushing the limits of humanity, that's not the measure that we're talking about. But when we're talking about construction, it's a very practical space with very practical problems. Most of them have been solved in every other industry many, many years ago and have been adopted, but for some reason that we'll explain later, not in construction. So in my mind, research in this space should also vaguely follow those principles, obviously not always the goal being to deliver a product. Now, we spoke about roughly what demand is. I'll ask the same question for a market. How would you define a market? We have a product. What is a market around that product?
At least one competitor.
So multiple people offering a similar service,
Yep.
multiple
And
companies
then competing on price.
competing on price.
What people can bear,
Sorry?
what people can bear,
Yeah, sure. Well, that sounds good.
that defines the market sometimes.
So you're getting to it. The idea has to do with scalability of demand. And you need to have multiple people that supply a product, of course. It doesn't have to be exactly the same product, but they may be fulfilling a similar type of need. So even if there isn't a direct competitor, there are always competitors. It's just that they may be solving something different. And then you need to have a lot of companies offering that space and a lot of companies and people wanting to buy that space. That creates a particular set of dynamics. Always in a market like that, there are humongous companies. Again, in my space, those companies are Autodesk, Trimble, Bentley, Nemetschek, and all of those large software suppliers. So if all of those companies already have all the clients in construction, they sell to everybody. If all of those companies have all of the software engineers that you can need and multiple ways to deploy resources, they can identify this problem and solve it if they want. Why do we exist? Why do startups exist? What's the point of starting a new company? Why don't just go into Trimble, into Autodesk, into the large construction company X, get hired and launch this new service? And this is where we're starting to speak a bit more seriously about what actually is a startup. So not only do you need to identify the demand, you need to identify the market for it in the terms of this spoke, but you also need to be able to identify the reason why all of those other large companies are not solving the problem. If they have everything, the resources, the customers, the tools that you're gonna work with, why are they not doing it themselves? In our case, the answer is very simple. Those companies are humongous, but they're competing with each other. And what they don't want is for customers to take the data outside of the Autodesk suite and then have them become a Bentley customer. If they try to close off their products and make it difficult to export data from tool A and push it to tool B, they try to create this dynamic where they eventually think they're going to own every user in construction and they don't want to help other companies. Now, this is something that's important to understand before doing anything at a conceptual level. So whenever we do this market demand testing that I mentioned, which is speaking to a lot of customers, all of these are all of this interview process with the customer should be structured in a way that helps you identify the points that you need. All of you do research, all of you have something that potentially has some market value or some commercialization value. I would strongly urge you to, even for fun, just arrange to speak with 5 people and have them give you as honest feedback as you can about whether or not they would buy this. And why are they using it? Why are they not using it? Because if you're developing 5, 6, 7 steps into the future and there are 10 intermediate things that need to happen, what are we doing is my question. So, okay, we spoke about what are the necessary preconditions of launching a startup in this space. We said demand, we said market, we spoke a bit about competition and the large company and small company dynamic. So that's the terms that I want to use to define the startup. A startup, it's not a business. It's a very, very different proposition. As a startup, you formulate all of these hypotheses, you put them in a business plan, and then you do whatever it takes, and that's the role of a founder, from the business side, from the technical side, in order to be able to go and meet all of those demands. You need to test this hypothesis. Okay, we put it out on paper, all of this sounds good. I wrote my thesis on why interoperability and multimodal cloud platforms are the future for construction. Amazing. Now we need to go test it. So in our case, the first thing that we did was to build a very, very basic, very, very simple version of that product. We chose those 2 tools. They're widely used tools in the industry. We are a spin-off from Cambridge, so we have access to a lot of potential customers to work with. I brought on a few people to help me. I found a co-founder that equally believes in this and is going to help me build this. So we went around to all of those companies in the space and said, here's what we think the demand is. Would you actually buy this? Why don't you have this already? And the answers were good enough to allow us to gather enough data, even if it's a bad product. We built a really bad product in the beginning, to be able to go to investors. And we said, okay, we've done all of this work. We built a basic version. We know what are the 5, 6, 10 steps that we need to take is to get to a next level of validating our hypothesis. Give us money, and we're going to go build it. A lot of them said, what? You're crazy. Construction is awful. I've had so many failed investments in construction and I don't invest in you. But we found some. There is always capital for a good idea and a good business plan. You're going to find it. That's the job of a startup. That's a necessary precondition. We were able to find it to raise a round from investment, and those people expect to get many, many multiples in the future if we do our job correctly. Okay, so I'm sure a lot of you have read about the startup ecosystem. Generally, you've heard some startup that did not exist 6 months ago and have achieved a crazy valuation, and they are 7 people and kind of a shitty product and very, very little revenue, and yet they're worth 50 million pounds or £1 billion or I don't know what else. Are those people crazy? So when somebody invests in a company with 4 people and gives them $2 million and values them at 20, are they nuts? Why? Why are they doing it? The company is clearly worth 0, right? It's a few people, no customers, or maybe a few customers, not a lot of revenue. Why? Why are they investing?
If so, they invest in 100 failed startups and one goes well, then they've sorted out their revenue for the next 5 years.
Yeah,
That's exactly the point. Because you have this idea, you're a contrarian, everybody thinks you're wrong, so you go build this product, you have done all of this work that they just mentioned, somebody gives you money, the valuation is completely meaningless.
yeah.
I mean, it has literally no meaning. We literally price our equity at precisely zero at the moment for the avoidance of any doubt. So why do those people give us money? Because those people make their money in their most extreme outcomes. In the case where you have the right team, you have the right hypothesis, you have tested the hypothesis, they found you early enough so that it's meaningful for them to invest. Because if you're big enough already, maybe they don't care as much, you can find money somewhere else. And then you need to go prove it and build it. And they only get to make their money for, as you said, from the one case out of 100, or maybe a bit more, maybe a bit less, depending on the seasons of venture capital. So how does that affect the dynamics of a decision of any individual within any organization? You are a researcher that has built something X, you're thinking about, is it a startup, should I do it or not? And one of the options that you're considering is, okay, I may target venture capital. So I'm going to go and do my interviews and identify the customers, figure out the problem. Should you do it, is the question. The real answer in this is that all of you, simply by definition of being associated with Cambridge in a program like this, are highly prized individuals who I'm sure a lot of you would be able to convince investors to give you money because of your background and your expertise and your knowledge. That's not always the best way. Venture capital only makes sense when you have have identified a market which is not yet addressed properly by the large players, or can be disrupted and disrupt an existing large player. And the potential outcome is so large that it's worth pouring millions and millions of pounds of other people's money, not your money, in order to go and build this thing and return that money into them. So if you want to build, if you think that there is a market for it, there is demand, but maybe it's not that large, there are plenty of other good ways to consider in terms of how to commercialize the technology. You can go to an existing player in the space and say, oh, Trimble, we have this new piece of IP, would you like to buy it? And also hire me to develop it. People do this. I did this in my PhD. A percentage of my PhD was addressed in that way. You may be able to launch a small consultancy business and say, we have this piece of IP, we'll go and figure out other people, other companies to work with, and we're going to sell quite a bit of it, but probably not tens or hundreds of millions or billions of pounds of it. In that case, you should never go and raise venture capital, because the investor would expect a huge return. They will only keep giving you money if you have a huge return, and if you're proving that you're on your path to going there. And what this means in that case is, if you can't deliver that, if it's not realistic, you shouldn't do it, because the initial value that was there, whatever that was of that IP, you have just killed it. It now belongs to an investor. And if whatever you're doing fails, it's probably going to be extremely difficult to find another way to commercialize. Doable, but extremely difficult. Now, how would you describe a consultancy? What is a consultancy? Plenty of consultancies in construction, what are they?
Basically agents.
An agent?
Yeah, like Indian.
James Bond?
No, I mean like an Indian. So, like.
Sure.
And do you want to have like an investor for the first start, and they are seeking advice from people who can potentially give suggestions?
Yeah, that's the conversation that happens. You're right, actually. But what matters is the mechanism by which you deliver value to your customer. Consultancies, in essence, sell time. That's the big distinction. You're not selling a product. You have people that you hire within your firm. And I'm speaking from consultancies, not the McKinseys of the world. I'm speaking about the construction consultancies. You have an architect, you have a civil engineer, you have a structural engineer, You sell their time into another business so that they can go and execute a specific plan of work. And then if you want to sell more time, if you want to sell more product, you have to buy more time from your employees. The problem with that's a perfectly fine business. A lot of technology that is being developed within Cambridge today is perfectly appropriate for commercialization via that route. Go and find 3 or 4 consultancies, give them a competitive advantage, and let them win more clients. They'll pay you if you can do that. That is not a startup. And the reason is that if you want to scale, you just have to hire more people. So that all of that depends on your ability to convince people to work with you at a fair price and to sell. And that's a very difficult nail to thread. You have to go and you have to beat the large consultancies in the space. Some of them are publicly traded. You're just never going to do it. You don't have access to those customers. So another value judgment is whatever piece of IP I have that has been developed within my own research, is it something that I can that in order to be able to commercialize, do I depend on selling other people's time? Or can I just deliver it in a way that has no dependency on that, on time, on people's time, and it just adds value to the customer? In our case, the answer seems to be yes. They can just contact us or get into our website, click a couple of buttons, buy a product that solves them a problem, and we're done with it. We can go to the next customer. And it doesn't matter if 1,000 people use it within their organization or 1 person uses it within their organization, the basic principle is still there. So that's another consideration to take into account. Am I building a startup or am I building a consultancy? Cool. That's all very nice and general, and I guess maybe helpful as a general direction on how to think of businesses. How does all of that change in construction? That's another big dynamic. All of you must have heard that construction is the least digitized industry in the world, second least, whatever. Some of the technologies are back in the 90s. In our case, the way that we saw that is that people still exchange files. So when you are in Civil 3D and you have designed something, you extract the file and you email it to someone else, or you send it via Dropbox or via a common data environment or something else. This is stuff that was happening in the early 2000s and late 90s in a lot of other industries. In every other industry, people do not exchange files. I hate when I see that. They just exchange permissions to query data. Again, simple example, you download Spotify, you don't buy the file before, no one cares, you just buy the permissions to consume the content. Think of along those lines about what we're going for here. So construction and adoption of new technologies is a difficult topic. Why? Why don't large construction companies and consultancies easily adopt new technologies? Again, guesses here.
High risk in construction typically.
Sure, yeah, risk is a factor. But wouldn't you be able to say that Apple has a risk when they adopt new technology to make it work?
But I would say it's less than, for example, building a building relying on startup technology or.
What? I don't disagree.
Yeah.
I'm just
That building could collapse if you're using software that.
Sure. That's a good point. There's always a human safety factor. Not the only reason, though. The main differentiation has to do with vertical integration. Construction companies are not vertically integrated. So a vertically integrated company, let's take as an example, Apple. They do all of the design in-house. They do most of the production planning in-house. They do not a lot of manufacturing in-house, but their manufacturing relationships they completely own. So when Apple works with a manufacturer that actually builds the iPhone, Apple gets to send supremely strict standards on what they want to do, so they have control over that. So you can make an argument that for a company like Apple or any product manufacturing company like that. They can make an investment, they can adopt a new technology, and then they can amortize the cost of that technology over millions of products. So it's worth it. It's actually really worth it for them to go and improve their product because they control everything and they get to split that a million ways. That's not true. In construction, every project is a one-off. Every project has its own nuances. Yes, modular manufacturing of building exists, still not good enough. But talking to plenty of them, still not good enough. So construction companies, when they want to adopt and invest in a new technology, they will never do it in-house because they won't get to amortize this benefit a lot of the time over many customers. Again, I know that's a very reductive statement in a lot of ways. There are always stuff that you can do to marginally improve your operations. The truth of the matter is that if you go into all of the public construction companies in the UK and measure the R&D budgets that those companies have, research and development, what a simple concept for a large business that's trying to create a competitive advantage. Those are usually an order of magnitude or two smaller than the average, than the rest of the public companies out there. Very simple metric, they simply do not invest in construction, in innovation. Almost the same thing applies, by the way, with the software providers in the construction space. They would much rather acquire companies rather than develop their own projects. I'm sure a lot of the people that work in those companies would yell at me if they heard me say that. The truth is probably somewhere in between, but the fact of the matter is that software construction companies have been getting acquired at a rate of 5 to 1 compared to any other industry. So they buy companies instead of investing in their own development, again, trying to offload as much risk as they can. Okay, so construction is not really vertically integrated, so it makes it very difficult, as we said, for companies to properly invest, improve their own operations. So the best next option is to buy products and adopt them that have some capability to improve their life. We think this is one of the products. This, in the context of startups, is a humongous opportunity. Because the whole industry has essentially outsourced their entire innovation approach from internally the company to what do we buy, from startups and obviously from academia. That's why construction is another particular industry because it has a very, very high rate of construction of startups that are spinning off from universities. So again, you're kind of in a perfect place. Top university, lots of companies, very good technologies, kind of in the middle of it. So yes, awesome. We want to commercialize the technology. We roughly know what to do on the market testing and demand and all of that kind of stuff. But we have a clunky industry dynamic that we don't know if everyone's going to buy. The benchmark that I have seen, at least for someone being willing to adopt a new technology in this space, has to do with ROI. How, if I pay for something, how quickly can I see the payoff of that cost? In my project, in my next project, in the project that I'm running right now, that's not going that well. That's what companies ask me. And if there's a benefit that I'm having, how much of that am I capturing as a company? That's my revenue, this small piece here of the benefit. So another thing to keep in mind is that whenever you're having a conversation with a potential customer or someone that's helping you develop and giving you steering for your IP, how you're going to be able to measure the actual benefit of what you're delivering is going to be able to help you justify the purchase, and it's going to help your customer justify the purchase internally. Because fine, you went into a user within a construction company that's running a project. They're having trouble running that project, and you have a product that is able to help them improve that project and deliver it better or at a lower cost. The obvious question is, okay, if they want to buy, can they buy? Are you speaking to the right person? And if so, what is the ammunition that you need to give them, even if they support you, so that they can justify this decision internally within the organization? That's a very, very important factor, because that person, as you said, has to do delivery. They are taking risks, and it has to be safe, it has to be good. So then it starts to become kind of a box-ticking exercise. I've gathered a lot of data. I'm being able to measure and quantify the impact that I'm delivering for this product that is easy for you to adopt. Go and tell whoever your boss is that is buying that thing, that this is actually an investment worth making because it's going to pay off at that particular time in that particular way. And this is the type of information that you still need to gather quite aggressively when you're thinking about launching a startup, or you launch a startup and you're in the middle of figuring it out. The question then becomes, at what point does a startup become a business? What would you guess? We said that the startup is an experiment that we're running because we've done all of this analysis of the market and all of those interviews. We've built like a very primary version of the product. When does it actually turn into a business? How would you
Turn a profit above investing back into the startup.
Can you speak up? I didn't hear you.
If you turn a profit above investing back into the startup, so you're taking money out of it for like wages or something like that.
A lot of people will say that. I actually disagree.
I would say when you start delivering a service or product to a business, to an organization, so to a client, as soon as you start that, then it's pretty much a
There are
business.
several technology startups, Twitter this week. I don't think they've ever made a profit, have they?
Yeah, they're not.
So they do provide a service, possibly.
Amazon didn't make a profit famously until about 2018, 19, somewhere there. The truth is somewhere in between of what you said. So when you have produced a product that meets customer demand, and then you can have a repeatable process for selling the product and continue meeting the demand, that's when you turn from a startup that had all of these crazy hypotheses and ideas and pitches and valuations into an actual business that has to run in a business-like manner. And that's the point that people usually refer to as Series A. A lot of now that's very much abused very, very often by this idea of product market fit, that they have actually found this, and then I need to build all the machinery around it in order to deliver this to the mass market and go and capture all of that humongous, amazing revenue that they can deliver and be proud of it. That's when you start turning into a business. And that's when you go again back to investors and say, I've done my first validation, I have found this product market fit, I'm selling. However, I need a lot more money to hire a lot more people, to teach them how to sell, to build the extra layers and versions of the product that they need to in order to be able to address more customers and go on into the traditional business model. And this is what we're doing right now with Didimi.